As a biology major in college, I am a huge nerd for things like evolution, things like biology, things like genetics. And it came across my mind just this past summer, like I should really dive in to the origin of species and see how much I can learn from Charles Darwin. This video is going to be focusing on what I learned in that experience, my reflections on it, and what I can recommend to other people who are in a similar situation or considering reading The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. First, I want to talk about the attitude that I came in to reading Charles Darwin's book. And I kind of had this attitude that not that I knew more than him, but that I had puzzle pieces that he didn't have, almost like dramatic irony, where you know what's happening, but the other characters don't, if that makes sense. I knew a lot of the fundamental things of genetics and of phenotype and genotype, all these different things that he had no idea about. I knew the fundamentals of DNA and how you can get all these different mutations and how DNA can transpose itself and things like this, when Charles Darwin had no idea of those occurrences. So in a way, coming in this book, I felt like I should have some things that he didn't, and that I should kind of have a leg up on him. But that was absolutely not the experience once I got through reading it. The first thing, I was so surprised by how intelligent Charles Darwin was. He really knew so much about organisms like the back of his hand. It was clear that, he spent the time to study this stuff. He spent the time to research and to ask other people about it. That's another thing. He's always referring to other scientists, and he's oftentimes even says, like, I haven't personally done the information research on this, but he has, and I really do trust his opinion, and this is what he has said. Although his theory is at the core quite simple, it's so meticulously laid out in his book. With that comes tons of different case studies and different examples, so the reader can really see and understand how natural selection is affecting different organisms in different situations. Something that everybody can appreciate about it is that he brings up common objections to his own theory, which is unbelievable in this day and age. You would never bring up objections to your own theory in a book that you're writing. But Charles Darwin, being, from a time past, understands how important it is for people to understand both sides of the story. And in that, he does a lot of research on the other side, trying to almost debunk his own theory, but of course responding to it in the best way that he can. And if he didn't know the answer, he would admit that he didn't know the answer. The only drawback on this book, and again, it's not every reader will feel the same about it, but for me, was the parts on geology. The geology parts in this book were very drawn out for me. I don't know much about geology, and it wasn't the reason I was reading the book. And he knows a lot about it, but again, it was extremely hard to follow for me personally. Someone who has a background in geology obviously would have a much easier time getting through those portions of the book. Charles Darwin's book is definitely better for somebody who has prior knowledge of evolution. Some of his theories, some of his contributions to natural selection and the origin of species are obsolete, and it's important that you can point those things out as you go along. Part of that is having classmates, having a professor that you can go and ask questions about it, so you can kind of reinforce the information that you're learning and confirm that it's actually up to date. So I would recommend this book absolutely for anybody who's a biology major. I think it's required reading. But for anybody who's very into evolution, has done a lot of reading, a lot of research into evolution, again, highly recommend this book. For somebody who's not super familiar with the evolutionary sciences, I would suggest getting a book to read alongside it. Another book that I read a few years ago that really introduced me to the theory of evolution in a very easy to understand, gradual way was The Greatest Show on Earth by Richard Dawkins. It really is an introduction into evolution and the evidence and the theory and the history of the theory. I think it's extremely important that all those things are grounded and understood before diving into Charles Darwin's book. So to wrap everything up, if you're big into biology, get it. If not, and you still want to get a book alongside it, like The Greatest Show on Earth, like a supplementary reading. Make sure and ask questions and research topics throughout the book. Thanks for watching this review. I don't know if I'll keep doing reviews like this. Maybe we'll just have to see how it goes, but if you want more information and more videos like this, make sure to subscribe here to Alice.